Good morning, James.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
And thank you, sir. Now, welcome and welcome to today's webinar on performance management. You did some good work yesterday, so I want you to carry on from where you left.
Thank you.
I'm admitting the participants.
Okay.
We'll catch up at the end of the training.
All right.
Thank you.
Are you adding them, eh? Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Beatrice, are you there? Gregory.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Wangui, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you. Who else is here? Hezron.
Good morning.
Hezron.
Yes.
Yeah, good morning. How are you? Who else is here? So we should be starting in a short while.
Morning, Malim.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good.
Mercy.
That is Mary.
That's Mary. So we have Mary, we have Mercy, we have Mercy, how are you? Mercy seems to have logged in, but she's not. We can't hear her. Wanjiku, we have Wanjiku there.
Good morning.
Good morning, Margaret. Good morning. Yeah, there she's waving.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Margaret.
Yeah, good morning.
No. So what has happened? We have postponed to Monday.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because there are two people who are engaged. We are engaged in another meeting. It could not be possible. Yeah, what I wanted you.
Hezron, please mute your mic. Okay, thank you. Seems Hezron is in the office, so he's trying to juggle between the training, logging into the training and handling office duties. Then, okay. Amos, how are you? Good morning.
Morning to you. How are you, Mwalimu, and the team?
We are good. We are good.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. We also have Mercy has come in when who is there. Beatrice is there. Okay. I think we can start. We can start because I know we're lucky to have a very engaging conversation around how do we handle performance management during this period of COVID. And I just want us we'll have a section on that so that we just bring ourselves to speed and just think around it and see whether we are going to still institute the normal performance appraisal that we've been using, or we need to make some adjustments. Then also holistically at the organizational level, how do we embed a dynamic approach, or we talk about agility, and also the innovation, how are we going to embed that so that we make our performance management system as flexible as possible. Otherwise, you are going to face so many resentment from staff, especially if you're going now to use the normal system that you've been using. That one, you must be sure that you face those kind of challenges. They'll actually question why you're still appraising them on something that it's beyond their control, or things that it's beyond their reach. And that's what conversation that we'll have to just ensure that when we leave this training today, we have some way forward on how to deal with the challenges that we could be facing in our workplace. Okay, so I want us to, let me share my slide so that we look at the objectives for today. So this is the second part of performance management. So today we'll mainly focus on the appraisal methods. Then we also look at evaluation ratings. We'll also look at the prerequisites for effective performance management. We'll also look at the system itself, the KPIs. Then we'll also look at the techniques for performance management. Then we'll look at the challenges of poor performance, or what causes poor performance, and how do we deal with the poor performance. Because now, ultimately, your role is to find a solution as a professional. So we'll be looking at how do we come up with the solutions to overcome these challenges that are likely to affect us, or they are actually currently affecting our people. There are challenges that will be between, they are within the person's control, others emanate from the organization, others emanate from even the current labor market or the landscape that is changing the manner in which we work. So that's, we'll pick up that conversation towards the end. Then it also now, as we deal with the challenges, then I'll bring in the aspect of what is the way forward now with or how do we amend, or how do we change our mindset so that we meet the demands of the dynamic world today, which has not only been influenced by the COVID, but also the technology and the globalization and all those factors that come with even the changing work contracts. Because you'll agree with me that currently we are having a lot of shift in terms of the contracts, where we no longer have, most organizations are actually moving away from the permanent and pensionable to actually contractual. So what repercussions does that pose to you, and also the policies, and also how do you manage people to ensure that you optimize their performance? At the same time, how do you do that to ensure that they get engaged and also they become motivated? So when it comes to the appraisals, these ones they're usually many, and will not go into detail, because ultimately the kind of appraisals that we use currently, they are borrowed from each one of these. You find that some organizations have a very elaborate appraisal method that will include all these. Maybe it has an essay section whereby you describe. It also has the ratings. It has critical incidents, and incidents come when you're actually explaining. Then we have those ones that deal with behavioral, or some indicators that are behavioral, and you can see that they have been captured. We have sections that have maybe graphs where you're rating somebody, or we have these ranking methods, where at the end of it, maybe you'll see that on your appraisal method tool, at the end of it, you have score between 40 and below, 50 and that. So that categorization now brings in the first rating, whereby now or first ranking, where now you can say that below 40 is a poor performance, 40 to 50 is average or approaching improvement or average, like that. So all those categories, you find that the current appraisal method that we are using tends to borrow heavily from all these other methods that were used initially, because when you look at them, some of them are so old, and because of their inefficiencies or because of their limitations, that's why we came up with, people came up with new other appraisal methods to just counter the weaknesses of each of those ones. But as I've said, we live in a dynamic world, and therefore we have to constantly reassess the tools, redesign them, and also basically just to engineer them to meet the current work demands. Because as the changes in the jobs will mean that also you have to change the appraisal tools and also the performance management methods, so that you are able to capture the key performance areas of the organization and also of the individual. So these methods range from the graphic scale or the graphic rating, which basically is a rating of somebody on a graph. So you have the highest. So on a graph where you just tick, maybe excellent, very good, and all that. So you just tick and indicate that kind of rating. So sometimes you may have an indicator whereby you're using a graphic rating scale, or you can have another indicator whereby you're using the checklist, where you're just saying James comes to work regularly, then it's yes or no. So checklist is basically yes or no, or he's able, or he works with the team, then you can say yes or no. Now, whenever you look at the subjectivity, then that's why we find it becomes a limitation to a checklist form. Then we have these critical incidents. Now, critical incidents are specific work areas where during your period of work, maybe there's something that you or an individual did. For example, maybe during the production process, maybe you work in the production sector, you did not deliver maybe the production within the production time. So that becomes a critical incident. Or there was an accident that happened, or at one point you became or you engaged in an uncouth behavior, or you definitely, or maybe sometimes you just disagreed with your team members, and that caused a lot of harm to the organization. It could also be, a critical incident could also be something that you did that was outstanding at that time. So then you look at that, and now they're captured as part of the aspects that will be used now to assess your performance. So at times you just look at what are the good things that you did vis-a-vis what are the limitations that you had. Now that's how the critical incident was operationalized. Then on the behavior anchored rating, now this is more on the behavior disposition of an individual, but it also depends on the kind of work that they're doing. So ultimately in this one, it's more focused on your behavior. How do you communicate? How did you respond to clients? How do you respond to colleagues? How do you share information? Okay, all that. How do you carry out yourself? Do you carry yourself with decorum? Do you carry out yourself with a lot of professionalism? All those are the behavior issues. So when you look at this, you find that each one of them tended to be specific to a particular assessment area. And that's why you can see that it's all of them now tend to bring out a common scale, which now we look at improving and looking at the work and looking at which of these will form our appraisal. Then of course we have the management by objectives. Then we have the 360-degree feedback, which is not also a new concept. Then we have this, the ranking methods. So then if you look at the first choice rating, basically is where you will say, normally we used to have this aspect of saying, in any assessment, even in school, you'll see that there is that normal curve where you say you have some people in the extremes, maybe the excellent and also the poor, very, very poor. Then you have the middle, we have the average and all that. And you find that we tend to use also these approaches in our, if you check our appraisals, the people that we do appraisal, you find that in one way or another, we borrowed from some of these methods. And that means that the current appraisal tool is trying now to capture the best aspects of each of those earlier tools that were being used, just to ensure that it tends to meet the limitations that were being exhibited by each of those tools. So currently you may not find an organization that basically uses maybe checklists in its appraisal, because if you only use a checklist, then it'll be you tend to become biased. Just use the easy appraisal, also people will say that it's also subjective, and that's why you find that it incorporates all these components to just ensure that it moves towards objectivity. Good. So if you really look at your appraisal tools, I think you'll be able to say to what extent have you employed this essay appraisal, or to what extent have you used the ranking methods or the critical incidents or the behavior ratings. Yesterday, there was a query about the 360 feedback. And I think the response was that it is very difficult to administer because of the resentment that is received, especially to people who believe that that's not supposed to be assessed from that angle. So all these are based on how effective can they yield the results that you are looking at. But remember, when you are concluding, we say that it's important to sensitize, to communicate, so that people understand why are you doing this, or what actually drives you to doing such kind of or employing that kind of process. Because in life, we normally say that people get, or you get the burnout because not of what you do, but because you don't understand why you do something. So ideally, even with the appraisals, if people understand why the appraisals is necessary, why they need to be involved, why they need to take part of this, to take part into this discussion, that's when it will actually make sense to them. But in the event that they feel that it's being done without a clear motive, then that's why you'll find that they're always resistant. You'll have a lot of challenges trying to convince them to meet or to actually follow the process. Now, apart from the appraisal methods, now to just focus on the key components of an appraisal. what does it constitute? Or when you're looking at an appraisal, then what is it? What do we get from that? So one of them is this feedback, and feedback could be from the colleagues, it could be from your boss or your supervisor, or it could be from the client. We also look at accomplishments. We also look at the overall performance, because at the end you give the general performance of the person in view of the job requirement. Then, still in the appraisal, also we look at the development and the learning plan. We also look at goal setting for the upcoming year, because from the appraisal, then we determine what are we going to do in the subsequent year. Then, of course, we review the goals and accomplishments through that. Then also we look at the merits. And of course, having all these, then it informs the kind of process that we talked about yesterday, that performance management process, whereby now we use a tool like performance appraisal now to inform the kind of accomplishments and how does that integrate with the overall organizational performance. Then next, I want us to look at what we call the performance evaluation ratings. Now, this is what I was saying, depending on the scale, on the grading of our tools, there are those that tend to use this. Maybe at the end, you do the sum of all the scores of the person in different sections. You may look at the job itself, then you look at the soft skills, then you're looking at maybe leadership, you're looking at other aspects. Then at the end of it, you have the score. So if your score, in that score that you get at the end after doing the evaluation, then that score can be classified either of these 5 categories. Now, this is just a typical rating scale, but you find that in different organizations, they have their own way of rating, and also the classifications, and also the range between which score meets. Maybe it's under the category of outstanding, it's either exceeding expectations, or it meets expectations, needs improvement, or does not meet the expectations. So whenever we assess or whenever we are assessing staff, then this is the kind of rating that we are likely to come up with at the end. And that's what informs now the purpose of the evaluations. So when you do the evaluations, maybe you may tie these levels of performance either to performance improvement plans, or you may tie them to promotions, or you may tie them to any incentive that you're looking at, or you may just tie it to improvement in terms of capacity building to the employee. So depending on the purpose that you have, that is driving you to carry out this evaluation, then it will actually assist you to determine what sort of purpose you want to implement. So depending on how you've categorized it, then it will actually assist you to make a decision. So for example, when you look at outstanding, whenever you give a score of outstanding, and this one I will not give the exact scores, but it depends with how you've put it, because if your score is out of 200, because I've seen companies that have out of 200, others 300, 400, others 100. So depending on the range that you've put, that's what will inform what outstanding means to you. So the interpretation is now based on how you view or how you've categorized your scores. But ideally, when we say that somebody is outstanding, definitely in our perception, it is somebody that has extremely, or we call it discretionary behavior in terms of performance, in terms of meeting other expectations, and willingness to support the team or also others in actually meeting the expectations. So looking at this, we are saying that this is a person that has met the highest possible performance rating given to an employee who consistently exceeds expectations on all the factors. So when you look at all those factors, if there are 50 factors, this person has just been extreme. The performance is just outrageous. So that's the person that now qualifies to be in this category. Then we have these exceeds expectations. This is a person also who exhibits high overall performance routinely, go beyond what is expected in order to substantially surpass all the key performance expectations. Remember here, there's the word routinely. And will have met or exceeded expectations on the competencies. So usually the exceeding expectation and outstanding, they have a very thin line. Because maybe in one way, the exceeding expectation, you've exceeded, but you've not been so consistent. But this one is when there is that aspect of, or the outstanding is when there's a lot of exceeding expectations in all the factors. Then meeting expectations, that's basically you've met your targets for the year, you've met your targets for the quarter, you've met your targets for the half year. And generally, when we look at you in all the areas, let's say, for example, areas to do with the delegation, areas to do with working as a team, areas to do with punctuality, areas to do with other indicators could be professionalism, other indicators could be giving the timely reports, all that. You're able now to meet those expectations. But it all boils down to how you've structured your tool in view of this. Then needs improvement. Of course, these are people, or these are rating that shows that there's a lot of deficiencies in the person's performance. So after you hit the goals, you've discussed, you've gone through the period of evaluation. When you look at the rating, you find that this person is deficient in so many areas of work. So these factors are the ones that now you categorize them as needs improvement. But this is just, as I've said, it's just a typical evaluation rating, but it also depends with what are the key things that you include to justify does not meet expectation or it meets expectation. Then we have this who does not meet expectation because idea this is somebody who cannot demonstrate proficiency in the competencies needed for that job. So ideally, they are below average, they are below completely. They have not met the expectations at all for their job. So what is your role in this kind of situation? From the discussion you will have, and from the ratings that you'll have, and also the indicators, then it's now your role as a supervisor now to discuss on the way forward. In the performance management process, we talked about corrective action. Now, corrective action will come in as you do these evaluations, because they'll inform what sort of decision you need to take. That's now on evaluations. If there's no question, then we can look at how do we carry out these performance appraisal processes. That means we look at it from before the appraisal, during the appraisal, and after. What sort of activities do we need to have, or what do we need to do to ensure that the appraisal process is as efficient and as effective as possible? All right. Now, this is just a guide on why or how we need to do our appraisals. But remember, in appraisals, we ought to be very humanistic. As much as we want to be transactional, but also there's that aspect of humanistic, the empathy that we need to exhibit as supervisors. So these are the things that we need to do before the appraisal. One, record keeping. We need to keep the records so that our records will speak for themselves. During the appraisal, you find that sometimes you take a lot of time because you don't have records. You're claiming that somebody has been uncooperative or they have not been giving the timely reports, but you don't have records to that effect. So in that case, then it actually waters down your argument, and you'll end up spending so many hours discussing something that it would have been resolved if you had documentation to that effect. Or it could be somebody has not been coming to work regularly, or they have not been reporting, or they have not been collaborating with others, but you don't have any report to that effect. So how are you going to do the appraisal without documentation? So apparently in HR, documentation is bedrock of our decision making. So you make sure that you have your records properly and accurately drafted. Also, we need to review the goals, because as we said, appraisal is backward looking. So you look at the back, you look at what you've done before, which informs now where you are going. Like as we say, we have to look at your history to determine your future. There are times it is philosophical where people will say that my future is not determined at all by my past. But when it comes to appraisals tend to have that backward looking, whereby you look at how your performance has been, because you cannot automatically just wake up from not meeting expectations and you jump to outstanding. There has to be a process through which would inform. And also from if you come from below expectations, of course, when you take the corrective action, now that's where we are saying you are learning from those mistakes, or you are learning from the errors that you did, which is now guiding you now to change your way of doing things, to change your handling of work, and also to change your skill requirement, and maybe just engage in capacity building to meet the demands of the job. Another point is we need to get input from others. Input means you also want to hear what is the perspective of other people, even the team that you're working with. You know, you may be struggling with a problem of dealing with a client, but once you discuss that with other team members, they tell you, no, this is the best way to handle this, so that when you get input, it gives you more objectivity when you're looking at the appraisal. So here, if you're seeking, I think that one I've mentioned, then also we need to prepare carefully. We need to prepare in advance so that we deliver the message that you intend to. I know we'll have our own various ways in which we carry out the appraisal interviews, but remember, we need to have that preparation. The adequate preparation will involve also the person that you are appraising being in the know about the kind of assessment indicators, what criteria is going to be used, and also just to have an advance notice to understand that we are going to have this conversation, so that you don't wake up today and you call someone and tell them we need to do your appraisal today. There has to be preparation. Let people understand and also prepare themselves psychologically for the process. Then prepare administrative details. This is what I've said. When you're communicating, there has to be communication on time. Select where are you going to carry out this? Are you going to carry it out in an office? Is it going to be a boardroom? Is it going to be a conference room? Then, of course, ask the employee to prepare. Let them review their goals. Let them look at anything that they feel is not clear, so that during that meeting, it's about trying now to get to a point of agreement, or getting to know exactly what that report could be meaning. Then during the appraisal, of course, now already the employee has come in and the line manager, so you're doing the appraisal. So what are we supposed to do? One, we need to explain the meeting agenda. I don't know how any of us does this. If you are communicating that, if you're having the appraisal, how do you set the tone for the appraisal? Or whenever somebody comes in and just say, now this is the time that we need to look at your appraisal, do you set the tone? The same way we say, how do you set the tone for the interview when you are interviewing people? What sort of tone do you create? Do you create that sort of adversary kind of tone, whereby now already you create fear, you create phobia in the person that is being interviewed? Or do you make the person feel the ambience, to feel relaxed, so that now they engage in the conversation? So you need to outline what is about to happen for the session. So just indicate what sort of things are going to happen in this appraisal meeting, so that somebody knows systematically that we are going to start with this. We'll have a conversation, then we'll have to agree on a few issues thereafter. Then another thing that is very, very key is that let us avoid having a one-way communication. Let us not be me telling the person I'm appraising, but let it be a two-way conversation. And we have to listen so that we encourage that two-way communication. You know, the reason why we have two ears is to ensure that we listen more. But apparently we tend to talk more than listening. And that's where now we fail. Anytime you listen, if you take time to listen, then you are also likely to interpret whatever conversation you are having more clearly than if you're talking and you're not giving time other people to speak. So during the appraisal, we need to ensure that we listen. Listen so that we have a two-way communication that is constructive. Also, we need to ask for ideas on how they can improve their performance. Let it or emanate from them. Let it not appear like you're the one telling them what they need to do. But you can always, there's a way in which you can engage the person so that the person realizes their weakness and they'll tell you, anyway, I think I need to go for training in people management. I need to go for training in time management. Or I need support. I need mentorship on report writing. So all that should actually, you make it emanate from the employee. And this is where we say HRs have to be coaches. You need to be a coach. Coaching means you have a conversation around this person's performance until they acknowledge that they are good in this and they have a weakness in this area. That way, then they'll actually get to realize that it is them, but not somebody telling them that it is you. So that coaching is what will enable you to make this person feel that they need help. Then, of course, you need to ask feedback on the appraisal section. So there has to be feedback from both of you. Then it's also very, very imperative that we stay focused. We need to stay focused so that we avoid ad hoc, irrelevant conversations during this meeting. What I mean by that is that sometimes we tend to deviate from the main course of the main discussion happening that time, and we deviate and engage into other issues that may not be relevant to that kind of conversation. And that way, then they will actually negate the reason why we are meeting for the appraisal. So we need to avoid things that will limit the credibility, things that will make this conversation not to yield the expected results. Then another point is that the employee expects and should know what he needs to improve. Of course, that will originate from that conversation you'll have had. Then be open. We need to be very versatile and open-minded based on the things that you'll hear that will be affecting the kind of work that the person will be doing. Then during the appraisal, again, we need to begin with the positive things that were done. Then we need to follow with the areas of improvement. Then we need to conclude with what? The reinforcement of your desire to do what? To help the person to grow and improve. So let not the person leave that office feeling that he went for grilling. Appraisals should not be grilling meetings. They should be meetings whereby you have a conversation, and that conversation is meant to improve the performance of the person, meant to realize that I'll be able to realize my weakness, and through that I can be able to change my next career planning actions. But I should not feel like when I leave that office, then I just breathe and say, oh, that was just too grueling process. So another thing that we need to avoid is don't make promises that you do not have control over. For example, don't tell the person that you're going to have an increment, we're going to promote you, we're going to transfer you. Because unless that is clearly defined in the purpose of the appraisal, then do not mention anything that does not touch on that purpose. Then review your goals. We need to concentrate on a few areas, things that will make a difference, and also try to ensure that there is continuity by looking at your strengths and weaknesses. More importantly, also, we need to focus on the SMART goals that will build strength in areas that needs attention. Now, that will be whatever conversations you'll have towards the end. Then after that conversation, where now you've agreed, you've gone through documentation, now after you discussed and agreed on those issues that I've mentioned here, then now you document. We need to complete the paperwork, make sure that both of you sign. Okay, make sure that people sign it, the appraiser and the appraisee. Follow up on agreements made during the appraisal and review what you have learned about the employee in your systems, yourself, and the appraisal. Now, before we look at the feedback, what sort of challenges have you faced whenever you're doing this appraisal meeting? And how did you deal with them? Because I've had cases whereby, even myself, I've had cases whereby an employee decided not to sign the appraisal previously when I was a supervisor. So I just want to hear from you what sort of challenges you've had whenever you're actually completing this process, and how did you go about it? How did you overcome the challenge of sometimes you find employees who are not willing to communicate, or they're not willing to sign this process? Maybe you can just take 3 opinions, then we proceed. Have you had any challenge whenever you're doing the appraisal at the end, or yours has been smooth? And I could, perhaps you can share with us, if it was smooth, then what made it to be smooth? If it's been tough, what made it tough, and how did you overcome that? So over to the members. Hello.
Morning, everyone.
What are the experience? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is Sally. Thank you. That was quite nice. I think the challenge that I've had is where maybe the line managers or the supervisors feel that the whole process should be an HR issue, especially, they don't want to be involved in appraising their direct reports. And so that is still an ongoing challenge. So what I've tried to do is to maybe say then, okay, let's have a discussion and I'll come and sit in to be able to sort of guide the process. But I feel like maybe for us, at least, we need some sort of sensitization on the intention. I like how you started it, the intention. If people know why we need to have the appraisal, then maybe they would not take it in that way. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. That sensitization we need to ensure that our the supervisors that are in different departments, they understand why they're doing that process. Have you ever trained them on this HR for an HR? Because I believe that has been some of the actions we've been taking or advising HRs to do to ensure that your line managers are given this basic knowledge of supervision and also appraisal. I don't know how that has been with your organization, or it's more of you trying to tell them what they need to do.
So far, it's been, I'm trying to even convince them on that. They believe everyone should stick to their lanes. But yes, I agree. It would be important to go through the HR for non-HR. Just the same way I know the finance people do that. They really hammer that in,
Yes.
Finance for non-finance. Yeah, so that's a good point. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sally.
Yeah. Hello. Good
Hello.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning,
at my workplace, I think the appraisal system has totally collapsed. Because the supervisors, that is the HODs, they have refused to cooperate, because in the long run after appraisal they see there is no impact at all, and so they don't see the need of doing appraisal, because there is no reward after the appraisal for good performance. There's no reward, there's no even sanction. I think it's just an attitude. They don't want to cooperate at all. So at my place it has totally collapsed, appraisal. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Beatrice, for that observation. At your place, it has collapsed. I don't know what course of action will you be taking so that we don't see a situation where now completely the organization is not able to to actually follow up on these. There is a hand from Emily. Emily, you can tell us something about your experience? Okay, as we wait for Emily, Mary, I saw your hand.
My comment is that this tool has some sort of phobia. The appraisal, the whole appraisal system, and also the seriousness in which this tool is applied. For example, I've seen cases where a manager would rate an officer above 100%. If you ask them to justify that sort of performance, you know, it was mechanically done. Then it has become a top-down approach. Like the manager sees this as a tool for the subordinates, not a tool for improving performance. So until we look at this whole tool as a means for all of us to improve performance, then we will never get anywhere. The things like achievement of targets, behavioral aspects of the person, then we are shaky, you know, we are not committal. We don't want to commit. We don't want to say this person is not a person of integrity. This person does not come to work, does not accomplish, you know. So we have made it very hard, just targets. So long as you have achieved your targets, we don't care how you have achieved the targets.
Yes, that's true. Actually, there's that ambivalence between the people who are doing the ratings or just the supervisors because of that lack of commitment to it. So at the end of it, you find that now this process tends to be more of a targeted process to just maybe either to punish or is being done just for formality purposes. Yet, as we've said, for it to be effective, then it needs to have a clear buy-in from both the person who is going to be appraised and also the person who is appraising. So there has to be that aspect of seeing or believing in the same cause of action, and especially this should be driven by the cause. What is the purpose of this process? And do we believe in it? Because at the moment, if it's only appearing that it's for the lower level employees, then it definitely will not succeed in meeting its targets. But it wouldn't actually serve the purpose of why it should be done. But if it is acknowledged that everyone is subjected to it, regardless of the cadre, regardless of the position, and people value it with its objectivity, then that's the only way it can actually serve its purpose. So I agree with you. The challenge has been when it's top down, and it's only believed that it's for the other lower level employees, and also when we don't justify why we are doing it. And I think that's clear from even was it Beatrice who said that the problem at the organization is that there's no purpose. So whenever you do it, it's like you're just doing it because people do not see when you're doing this appraisal, what is it serving? What purpose is it serving? And now that's where performance management will come in, so that we should not divorce appraisal from performance management, because performance management should be continuous. So that means let us not wait for June, or let's not wait for November to appraise somebody and mention about the things they were supposed to have done in August. But let it be a continuous process so that we continuously support the employee or to support the staff to be able to understand what their purpose is. But I think more importantly is the execution bit, where we are saying the supervisors that we have, one, have we had sensitization to the extent of having a culture whereby they have that responsibility? Because I know the challenge has been, because I can see when there's a comment from who, the non-committal response from supervisors due to fear of victimization. So your supervisors will always want to not to appear to be hands-on in providing objective reports for the people that they're supervising. Is because of this fear of victimization. So some of them will also want to play that buddy sort of relationship, where they want to clearly say that this one is not performed, and it all boils down to, even initially maybe they will not have discussed these targets. Thank you very much for that feedback. Then there's a feedback from Patrick, who says, at times an employee will try to insist to the supervisor that he or she has performed better even when she can't support it. So that's a comment from Patrick. Another comment from Wanjiku is that it is seen as a top-down tool. Employees don't understand it. Also, the appraisal is done for performance contracting purposes. It doesn't serve the purpose. Okay. Those are the comments from Wanjiku. There's that comment from Mary. There was that comment from Beatrice. So ideally, we can see the kind of challenge that we are facing or we deal with at each of the levels that we are in. But we need to be alive to the fact that it is us to provide the way forward on this. For instance, yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, I think this is Beatrice.
Yes, Beatrice.
My comment would be that I think organizations should have reward and sanctions policy such that after the appraisal, at least for good performance, there should be some reward. And for bad performance, there should be some sanctions. I think that one can also improve the situation on appraisals. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that input, Beatrice. And I know even as we are seated, there could be some of us here. When you do our appraisals, we actually tie them to all those incentives. Yes, Mary?
There is something you talked about earlier, about continuous assessment and documentation. For as long as the two of you do not have documentation, where you consistently come late, there is nowhere that we have signed that you always come late.
Yeah.
You always achieve targets. There is nowhere where you have made commendations or that this person, you are a good worker, you meet your targets. When it comes to just the end of the year, you are just guessing how this person performed. So there is no seriousness.
Or you muted yourself, or you're done, Mary? Hello? You are muted, you're muted.
I finished my comment and I muted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I agree with you. Documentation is, as I said even yesterday, that HR, any supervisor, you must have documentation. Otherwise, you'll be on the spot. Somebody will ask you, prove that I was coming late. Prove that I was not cooperative. And even you, as I think there was somebody who communicated that, who commented that the employee cannot justify their performance. It's also because there's no documentation. But if that process has been done continuously, then you have a record to show that actually on this date, this is what we achieved. On this particular date, this is what happened. On this particular date, we had a meeting on this and this. We had a meeting about lack of compliance. We had this meeting on this particular day. It may not be a form. Nowadays, it could be an email. Well, just say further to our conversation today, this is what we've agreed on this particular day. Now, that one serves as a point of reference. So even if it's at the end of the year, but you have an email dated 2nd February, where you had a discussion around a particular issue. Maybe in April, you had another conversation around it. So all those now put together, they actually inform your action or your decision at the end of the year. But I think what has been lacking with most of us is that we tend to just do things, then at the end of the year, we start recalling where this person did not do well and where they did well, and you cannot justify that. And that's why the person you're supervising will tell you, no, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this statement. Because at that point, however much they know they did it, or they did or they messed up something, they will not admit. Well, that's the point where they feel that this appraisal is between me and my job. So if there's no evidence, I'll definitely deny. So we need to be very, very cautious with documentation. And that's why I was advising that make sure that your supervisors are trained. Just pick on the key areas. Pick an area of recruitment. Pick an area of training assessments. Pick an area of dealing with grievances, performance, and employee relations. Then you just take your supervisors through that training. You don't make it so complex, but just make it, and also the documentation bit. Let them see how you need to write even a warning letter, so that they don't bring you as a HR to be writing warning letters. Because if you look at the process, actually it should be this line manager who is doing what? Issuing the warning letter. But you find every time they'll throw that to the HR and say, HR, there's this problem, I want you to issue the warning letter. But HR is not the supervisor of that staff. And that's where now because HR should actually facilitate. The HR should facilitate that actually you followed the due process when instituting this kind of disciplinary action. So we need to take that role a bit to the line manager, so that also they don't burden you with administrative work. Let them also own up that, and it will actually make it easier. Even when you're looking at making decisions, it becomes easier. Thank you for that. Then from Sheila says, incentives, bonuses, pay rise must usually follow appraisals are carried out. Okay, I think for them, they do that. Patrick says performance management works well if the right planning is right, when the SMART objectives are discussed and agreed between employees early enough, and that there is constant monitoring and evaluation. True. Yeah, if you do it earlier, but if you are signing your KPIs in June. In fact, somebody was telling me that in the organization, because of COVID, they were supposed to sign their KPIs in March. But when COVID hit, they have never had that session now to sign those KPIs. So I was asking them, how are you going to sign that, yet you've completely been disjointed in the process? So we need, of course, yes, we need to ensure that we have those agreed early enough. Especially, in fact, what we normally advise is that when you're doing the evaluation for this year, so if you've done them last week, in December, you should be signing the KPIs for 2021. But don't wait until end of January is when you're trying to see when are we going to sign our key targets or the objectives. So it all boils down to planning. How do you plan? How do you execute? How do you monitor and evaluate? Thank you very much, guys, for those comments in line with the appraisals. Good. So I think allow me to proceed to the next slide, which is basically on feedback interview. So feedback is very key. And as I've said, the feedback that will originate from the interview will be informed by the correct documentation that you have, the conversation that you've had, and at the end of it, what was the purpose of the appraisal, so that it gives you a systematic approach towards understanding the work, understanding the person's capabilities, understanding the limitations, and what is the way forward for those limitations. So that we don't pursue this, or we don't see this process as, and I think it was one of us mentioned that we look at that process as if it's a do or die process. That's because we've made it to appear like during that period, is when you as the supervisor, it's the time now to determine the life of that person. Just like when people say, there was a joke somewhere, somebody was saying that he went to the office of the HR and the HR told him that if you look at this pen, this pen determines your life. It is the one that I signed when I was employing you, and it's the one that I can sign to fire you. So it's basically the pen that can fire and hire. And it was that joke was not. We looked at it and said, so that means it's only that pen that can determine your life. And you see, this pen should be informed by this process and the feedback that comes in. For this pen to be objective, it must be guided by the documentation that we've already mentioned, so that we ensure that people understand exactly why certain actions have to be taken. Lest you find yourself trying to explain and trying to justify why you've rated somebody with 5 and not 10. So it becomes a whole process. I've seen appraisal interviews that take, you anticipated to take 1.5 hours or 1 hour, but you end up taking 4 hours just because there's no proper documentation. And here you have somebody who is arguing and telling you, no, this one is not the what I did, or the person also that cannot justify their performance, just rating themselves 10, but of course, they have, according to your documentation, or maybe also according to your imagination, they have not done it. So it becomes a whole conversation that cannot end. Now, depending on the type of appraisal, you may do an appraisal for promotion, or sometimes, depending on that, you may not promote somebody because they have not met the requirement, or it could be that you want to give them an incentive. So all these could be the purposes of that appraisal, or you're doing some appraisal so that you identify areas of improvement. Now, usually the challenge is you're doing the appraisal to identify areas of improvement, but you're not coming up with a plan of improvement. If there's no plan of improvement where now the employee is sensitized and brought into speed, then for them, they feel that this is an annual thing that we do just for the purpose of recording. But if they understand that we are doing it because we want to improve, and you can have an action plan, and you say in the next 3 months, I want you to have changed your approach to work. Then you have that, and you'll be monitoring that. After that, you have another concept where you say, within the next, the first quarter, we need to have resolved these issues that you had in this particular year. That way, then, it actually also informs the staff that there is some objective approach towards improving my performance. But after the appraisal, then you wait and sign other KPIs and wait for next year. Without having an action plan for this limitation that were in the previous year, then of course you are getting it wrong. It will become a routine thing and it will not serve its purpose at all. Now, as a supervisor or as a line manager, what are the key points that you should keep in mind when conducting these interviews? One, don't get personal. Don't get personal. Even if you have personal issues, but as I said, don't introduce things that are not part of the conversation. Also, you should be direct and specific. If you're dealing with an issue to do with incompetencies, please highlight those incompetencies, outline them, relate them to, because now you have given the employee the period to look into the competency areas and also their job requirement and all that, so that also they can ascertain that actually they have a problem with regard to their competency levels. Also encourage employees to talk, because we said let it be two-way communication. Do not allow yourself to talk much at the expense of the person that you are praising, because that way then you'll not get the feedback that you want, and also it will not make that staff to understand the weakness that they have, because it should come from them. Let them own it up and understand that actually I would have done better had I followed the instructions. I would have done better had I maybe done this kind of training. I would have done better had I worked with the team. All that could be things that should originate from that conversation between you and the staff. Now, in the feedback interview, and this one I've already mentioned, that employees can be very resentful with the results. Or they look at it and they'll say, this one is not me. These results are not reflective of what I've done. I've done a lot of work, I've achieved a lot, and I don't expect this kind of rating. These are the things that you have to be alive to the fact that you will get them or you've been finding them. So that will drive the employee to be so defensive. Even during the discussion, they become so defensive because they feel that the kind of rating they have received is not objective. One, you being the appraiser, you have to acknowledge that those defensive behavior are normal. Normal in the sense that not everyone will agree to any rating. Ask yourself, you've been going, when you started going to school from primary to even now, and you sit for an exam, not all of us will always agree with the results that we get. Sometimes you get a D and you feel this exam I'll have scored a B or I'll have scored an A. So that means that defensive behavior is usually there, but it depends with the extreme case within which the person exhibits this kind of behavior. Then you should never attack a person's defenses. So if they're defending themselves, don't attack them and also engage in that. It's like you're fighting the fire. Allow them to vent. Once they are vented, then try now to justify why it's that way. But anytime you raise your voice and try to shut them down, it will actually be counterproductive, and that conversation will not yield any fruits. Also, you should understand the need to postpone the action. If you feel that things are not in the right mind, then you have to postpone that meeting so that you have it on another day when you have the right mind. Then you should also emphasize or empathize with the human mind. This is why I talked about the human aspect. Let us have the human aspect in us to guide us in coming up with these decisions. So that brings us to the prerequisites. Prerequisites are things like things that make performance management to be effective. What are these things? One, documenting the performance. You can see the first one. So when you hear that you are not meeting any agreement during the interview, ask yourself, did we have documentation? Once you have the documentation, and nowadays with the system, it makes it easy because you just generate the report and the person will see it. Nowadays with that, it's easier to manage that. Otherwise, whenever you are short of documentation, believe you me, you'll find a lot of resentment. Secondly, make sure that your goals are SMART. They should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Don't have a very, some of these we say they are very ambiguous goals, which cannot be justified by when shall I do this, or how do I do it, or within what limit. Make sure that they are SMART. Then we ensure that we are also practical and also we are approaching the performance management with a particular structured way. That's what we call about the standard format. Format of performance appraisal should be simple and understandable. And this makes it to work well if from the onset we had our clear goals, we had our expectations, and we signed them and we said, this is what we need to achieve. That way, because I understood from the onset, they do not have a challenge when it comes to the final appraisal. Then evaluation techniques, let us ensure that we have the appropriate tools and the methodology that we are using. And this again marries heavily with what? The standard format. Because once I understand that these are the issues that I'll be evaluated upon, then it's clear in my mind and I will therefore work towards that. Another point is communication. And I've said this is a very indispensable part of performance management. You have to communicate from the word from the goals. Like I've said, once you do your appraisal this year, can you communicate the subsequent KPIs that you're going to have? The next, feedback. Ensure that our feedback is developmental than judgmental. Let's ensure that our feedback is developmental than judgmental, because if it's developmental, then it's meant to improve. But if it's judgmental, then it means you are using it to victimize people. Then personal bias, make sure that we avoid that, free from the interpersonal influences. We'll be looking at factors that limit the credibility of appraisal systems. And we'll be looking at those personal influences and factors that will make that process to be watered down. So that brings us to these concerns and interests. As a manager, then you need to be concerned about the rationale for establishing a performance management system. What does it do? And what purpose does it intend to achieve? So to be effective on that as a manager, then you must identify and analyze the manager's performance problems and the related management skills in the context of your specific organization. So that's what should be hitting your mind every now and then. You need to see, is the purpose of this performance management or appraisal clear? If it's clear, then what is my responsibility? What is the responsibility of my line managers? What is the responsibility of our staff? So that clearly, once they understand their responsibilities, then you are likely to have the synergy with regard to implementation. Other concerns include remedying poor performance, bridging the gap in performance expectations, securing equitable rewards and punishment decisions from management, then softening performance pressures through appropriate planning, scheduling, and delegation. So all these should be things that, as a manager, you'll be grappling with and thinking, what direction should I take? Then this brings us to the question of what is a performance management system? When you talk about a system and the process, once we automate the process, of course, we automate it in a system or in a tool. So generally then, the process that we talked about as performance management process is merged into systematic systems or subsystems, which now interdepend on each other to provide the related or the outcome that is anticipated from the process. And that's what forms the system. So when you are doing the appraisal on paper, vis-a-vis if you are doing it in a system or you've developed an automated process, that makes now the tool to be a system. But now when we talk about this performance management, remember we said it tends to be a holistic system that does not only look at the individual performance, but also looks at the general organizational performance from a number of perspectives. For example, in view of the balance scorecard, where we are looking at the financial, we are looking at the business, internal business processes, we are looking at learning and growth, and we're also looking at the customer perspective. So all those, once we get feedback from all those perspectives, then that balance scorecard now becomes our system, the organizational system that can be used now to make decisions. It actually works very well now to inform strategic decision making, because now you've been able to understand the organization from the four main perspectives. Unlike the usual one where we just analyze at the end of the year tunaangalia profit margin, losses vis-a-vis profit. So that way then it limits the manner in which we need to institutionalize the performance management system. So this system is divided into three. One, planning to manage performance and development. Then secondly is to monitor, manage performance and mentoring managers development or management development. Then we have the annual stock taking. When we do, as we look at those aspects, then the question that we'll be asking ourselves is, what sort of methodology are we going to use when we are carrying out or we are embedding this system to give us results? One, we'll be looking at the objectives. Others will be looking at the behaviors and the values, and also the competencies. So in our tool, for example, on the competencies, there could be technical competencies. There could be managerial competencies that we may be looking at, or there could be soft skills that we are looking at. When it comes to the objectives, it could be you're looking at the performance, the productivity, like now the lost time injury rates of X or less, sales of X within 6 months or a year. Those are now it could be now the hard components of objectives. Then it could be also behavior in terms of culture, teamwork. How have we been able to exhibit ourselves, or how do you rate an employee based on what? Levels of innovativeness, levels of teamwork. That's basically the questions on what we need to assess. Now, to do that, we must have what we said at the initial stages. You have written documentation of what needs to be achieved. So when you are writing your performance goals, there are a number of steps that we may follow. One, for example, we need to begin by writing the basic nature of the task. For example, source new clients, increase sales volume, reduce rejection rates, or complete planning phase. That could be a goal. So when you're talking about reducing rejection rates, that's a goal. But now what will be the KPI? So you need to tell us you reduce the rejection rate by 50%, or by 75%, or by 80%. Now that makes it measurable. It becomes a SMART objective. Completing the planning phase, you need to tell us that planning phase, when do you intend to complete it? So it has to be specific within a period of time. Secondly, in drafting your performance goals and objectives, there has to be two components, the quantity and the quality. The quantity and the quality, and now this is what gives an example of what we've looked at. Source the number of qualified clients within Y months, like now source new clients. So this one now makes it what? You're qualifying it. Increase sales volume by X% by June. Reduce rejection rates by 5% by the end of the year. Complete the planning phase by 30th of October. Now, this makes it to be within a time limit, and also it's measurable. You can see that you're looking at the measurability, you're looking at the time. Then if necessary, add any procedures or criteria that describe the action to be taken to achieve the target goal. For example, you need to source X number of qualified clients within Y months by actively advertising services to potential clients within the industry. So you're now putting an initiative. It's more of what initiative will inform you now to achieve those kind of goals that you've indicated. Then we have review and refine the target or the goals that are necessary. So that's very, I think that serves the purpose of ensuring that you have your goals that have been translated into SMART objectives. Look at how specific they have been, especially in step 2. And now we have the initiatives coming in step 3. That way, then even if you are doing your documentation, it's very easy now to track that, and you're able to give reports on each of these components without any hitch. Now, what are the tips of successful performance management? One, I think there is a comment or a chat. Let me see. Works well in the planning. Okay, Mwalimu, will you send the notes? Yes. They are accessible. Okay, so the tips for this performance management, successful performance management, is that one is that it's a requisite for any organization, for example, because no organization exists without monitoring where it's going. And you can only monitor where you are going if you identify the performance gaps, the performance progresses, the milestones, and the challenges that you're getting. Secondly, it also means for accepting and embracing change rather than holding it at arm's length. Thirdly, it should be a continuous process. So it's not a one-off project. Performance management is continuous. Then it's also people-centered activity. And it's done with people, not to them. You don't do performance management to people. You do it with people. So that means they are part and parcel of the whole process. It also measures credibility, and also it makes it understandable when it comes to the things that are being focused on. It's also driven by the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It also measures about efficiency, effectiveness, adaptability, and more importantly, it also uses techniques that are relevant and effective and uses them well. It also judged by the customer on how the customer believes or feels about the product or the service. KPIs, somebody was asking about the KPIs, that how do you, understanding how to come up with the KPIs. So depending on the tool that you have, some of the key components that you may look at when you're coming up with the KPIs are as indicated. For example, you may look at employee productivity. Employee productivity, you may measure that using the average sales turnover per employee. You may look at the average profit per year. You may look at the value add per employee. So you're looking at the contribution of that employee before and after. Before the employee joined, what value contribution was there? After they joined, what value contribution have they added to their role and also to the team and overall to the organization? You may also describe it based on employment cost. You're looking at the employment cost as a percentage of the sales turnover or profit. You're also looking at the costs per employee, the cost as percentage of the operating costs. So you're looking at the general employment cost vis-a-vis if you had new employees or these new employees that are there, what sort of costs have you incurred? Then you can do that and populate it to reflect in view of the general budget of the organization. Then we have employee turnover or loyalty. So you're looking at the percentage of employees that leave the organization in a given period. And also you're looking at the length of service. I know currently not many organizations maybe save to the government, but in the private sector, you find that employees are moving from one organization to another. There's a lot of mobility. So rarely will you find somebody who has worked for 10 years. In fact, I was surprised last year I attended an NDF party of another corporation, and they didn't have anybody who had worked in that organization beyond 15 years. Actually, the longest serving person was 12 years. And we asked ourselves, then what is happening with the labor market? But we came to understand that because of the changes and the dynamism, then you find that some organizations will have people working for 5 years, even less than 5 years, 6, 7 years, and that. And like before, where you'll find somebody has stayed in an organization for 30 years or even 40 years. Then you may also look at your KPIs in view of the process of recruitment. For example, lead time to recruit an employee, cost of recruiting, all that. You may also look at your KPI based on the average salary paid versus competition. Also, you look at the benefits provided versus competition, industry and geographical norms. You may also look at it from the willingness of an employee to recommend that organization. For example, whenever we ask people, will you recommend a friend or a person to our services? The same question we should ask our employees, whether they'll be willing to recommend other people to join the organization. That's also another KPI another area of KPI that you may develop. Employee development, percentage of employees that develop an individual development plan. Also, you may look at it from those who have executed the plan and those who have not executed. Those who have participated in that. You may also develop your KPIs in line with the skills and competency availability, so that you're looking at the percentage of time required or the percentage of the required skills and competencies available within the organization vis-a-vis what you need to have. You may also look at the average time to develop skills that are required. Now, this borders on the question of when you are hiring people and you want to train them to develop competencies, vis-a-vis if you get somebody who is completely competent, how do you calculate these? So that sometimes you'll say it will take a whole year to train somebody to be competent in this role, but it will take 2 months or 1 month to get somebody who is competent to join the organization. Now, those are the conversations that you'll have in view of the KPIs that you need to form for this kind of section. Others will be in terms of the training budget, expenditure on staff training and development. Others will be on employee satisfaction. How do they rate their satisfaction in view of the training they've attended, the availability of the training opportunities, then also the impact of the training before and after the training. Before the training, how was the employee in terms of productivity? After the training, how do you determine that? On employee satisfaction, it could be the satisfaction survey index. On motivation, you look at the commitment levels. You may look at availability of the training courses, which I've already mentioned. Then also look at availability of internal promotion opportunities. All these are just typical areas that you can form your KPIs on. So I hope somebody was asking about KPIs and coming up with them. Some of this will actually inform you on shaping whatever you're carrying out and what you're using at the moment. So the techniques for performance management, now these are the things that we use now to carry out performance management, SA method, management objective. Some of them are borrowed from the appraisals, but they're just used now to continuously monitor. Like an SA method is when you write an email saying that we did this, we had this discussion, that can be used for that. Then we have management by objectives, when you've established the objectives for that period of time. So every time you monitor and say, you are supposed to have completed this project by this date. You're supposed to have given this report by this date. But unfortunately, you've not done that. So you document that to just inform the performance. Paired comparisons. Now here you compare how other departments are doing or other individuals are doing at the same level, and you look at the kind of work that you're doing. If John completed this task within 5 days, how come you're not completing it within 5 days? So then you ask yourself, then, is it that John is more competent? Is it that you are not competent? Is it you lack commitment, or what could be happening? Then first choices and the first distributions. In fact, the first choice is where now you have the categories I talked about, where you're looking at the very poor, average, very good, excellent. Then the checklist, I think I've talked about it, behavioral anchored, critical incidents. Those are the things that I've already mentioned. So then that brings us to these causes of poor performance. Unless if there is any question on techniques. Poor performance, and I request that we take a break of 10 minutes. Then we come back and finish up the remaining bits. It's 10, so we come back at 10:05. We again meet at 10:15. 10:15. Then we proceed with the second and final bit of this bit. Fine, so let's take 10 minutes and stretch a little bit, take some water if you've not taken breakfast. It's time you can do that. Then we meet in the next 10 minutes.
My friend, why? Mbona unakuwa na stress? Na tuko hapo.
Hakuna mwalimu ameenda hapo.
It is break time. Oh. But you see this one is top.
Hello.
Hello.
Are we back?
Hi.
Hello? Yeah, yes, we are back.
Good. I think we can now proceed.
Hi.
We can proceed. Yes. We can proceed with the problems that we face in performance management. Or what causes poor performance. Now, these are just general thoughts around it, but you realize that depending on the unique nature of what we do, you'll find that our courses will be different. They'll vary depending on also the work scenario, the job requirement, that. These are just general ones. They may not apply holistically to everyone, but they're just a guide towards some of the causes of performance problems. One, it could be unfamiliarity with the equipment or the process. Right now, because of COVID-19, we have moved to Google Meet, we are using Teams, we are using Zoom. So all that has its own challenges. So at times, you are holding a meeting with your team, and maybe you're not hearing them, or they're trying to connect. Or every time they connect, then they go off. It could be a technical issue, it could be they don't have the bundles, or they're somewhere the connectivity is poor. So that can cause that problem of what? Lack of their ability to actually meet their performance expectations. Or maybe you've just onboarded people with the new system and you expect them to be as efficient as possible. So they require some time for them to get used to the system, to understand how do they need to input, how to generate reports. So because of that drastic change from the old system to the new system, it can also cause these problems with the performance. At times it could be poor peer relationships. I'm sure you've come across this quote that says, people leave managers, they don't leave organizations. So in this case, you're not just talking about the managers, but also you're looking at the peers. Perhaps maybe you're working with a very, very toxic team or a colleague that is very toxic. So this toxic nature of your colleague is likely to throw you or to actually force you out of that organization because you feel uncomfortable or you feel that you don't blend at all. Even if you try, you're not able to blend. So, and this can now lead to poor performance whereby maybe you're not working as one, okay? Or you have these cases whereby people will say, my colleague is always non-supportive. Even if they have time, even if they know the information that you're looking for, they will not support you. So that way, then at times we can attribute that to, especially if you're working as a team and you're not able to meet your performance objective, then we can say it could be maybe poor peer relationships. Or you're also not very outgoing, you're not engaging with people. And therefore, while people are discussing and finding out the solutions, you're actually sitting back. At that moment, then you don't meet your performance expectations because of the poor peer relationships. So what I'm saying here is that these relationships can either be individual driven or it could be group driven. So it could be either you who is actually exhibiting the poor relationships, or it could be the other person who is exhibiting the poor relationships. Then at times we may talk about lack of time, but this comes in when you're dealing with ad hoc issues or the kind of work or the project that you've given people to work on is enormous, but you want them to accomplish it within the shortest time possible. So if it's not a realistic timeline, that's when now we go back to the SMART objectives. You don't expect a project that is supposed to run for 6 months to be completed in 3 months, because that way then you are really burdening this person and they'll actually burn out. And because of that, even the quality of the work that they are likely to bring out will be very, very dubious. Also, people may not perform to the expectations because of personal problems. It could be the personal problems that they have. The personal problems can arise from you as an individual, your inability to open up, your inability because you have other personal problems at home, you are living in an environment that is not conducive, you didn't sleep at night, or you're spending sleepless nights, or generally things that affect you at the individual level, and therefore they curtail your ability to concentrate on the work that you're supposed to do. So because of that lack of concentration, then your focus is not determined. Hence, you will not achieve your performance targets. Other things could be substance abuse, and this deals with maybe alcoholism or just engaging in drugs, which jeopardize your mental capability, your ability to work, and just ability to deliver on the results. Other ones could be poor work ethics. Now, poor work ethics can entail your inconsistency in going to work, or when you're doing things, you don't work as per the guidelines, meaning you don't respect people, you don't respect your supervisors, you don't cooperate and all that. That could be a poor work ethic. Another reason could be low motivation. Like I remember there's a case from Beatrice who said that they have people who feel demotivated because even if the evaluation is done, but they feel demotivated. Reason being, there's no link, there's no clear link between somebody who has performed very well, what sort of returns will they get, vis-a-vis people who have just sat back and have not done anything. So that also causes poor performance. Another cause is lack of ability. This one I talked about the capability. You may have started working, and this one is, we are in a world whereby people are not looking for careers, they're looking for jobs. And because of this need now to meet our needs, you just want to get to be able to meet your, to pay your bills. That way, you'll find yourself in a job which is not in a career. What I mean is that you're doing something just to meet your demands, but your passion is not in that. So in that case, then you find that you don't fit in that position, and you will not do anything to make you now fit in that position. And I'm sure even when you're seated here, if we ask ourselves the jobs that we've done, and even some of us, maybe even we are seated here, but we are not in our career. That's now where some of these causes of poor performance emanate, because once that's not your career goal or it's not your career, then you tend to just, it's like you're saying, I'm just here for a period of time, so you are on transit. And that aspect of being on transit will not make you to think that you need to build or to hone your skills in that particular area. Then that will limit your performance. Good, so those are some of the reasons. I want us now to look at the challenges. But these challenges will be many, though I've only outlined 4, but you find that the challenges to poor performance are many, or to performance management are many. One of them is the resistance, and this was also echoed by one of us who said that the top management are not committed to it. According to them, performance issues is a thing of the other staff, but not them. So that lack of commitment, or now them not cooperating with that concept, then it actually makes the performance management to be a tall order to achieve. Because you can't achieve a performance management, because performance management entails the whole organization. If it's not being driven by the top leadership, then whatever you're doing is just an event which does not constitute any strategic drive or direction that you may wish your organization to take. So then we have a lack of competencies. Now, this marries very well with what we've said. You're doing some job and you're not competent. So how do you start by looking for development programs to enable you to be competent? Do you look for short-term, long-term career development programs? Then also there's a problem of crafting or creating a rating instrument. Usually this one is when your instrument or your tool, let's assume your appraisal has so many indicators which are not relevant to my position. So if they're not relevant to my position, then I will end up not just indicating not applicable, not applicable. At the end of it, that tool then does not meet the needs of that job or does not meet the needs of that role. Then also determining the evaluation criteria. Remember that evaluation where we talked about what is the criteria, how do you justify each of those criterion that you have indicated, so that people understand, the line managers or the staff that you're going to engage in this process, they should be well versed with it, so that they can be able to interpret and also give their opinion on each one of them. So how do we overcome these challenges? One, when you're determining the criteria, we need to have both qualifiable and measurable indicators. Reason being, if you're looking at a qualitative aspect, then we should have that qualitative rating criteria, whereby we can say you're good, you're average, and all that, depending on the quality of that aspect. For example, something that is qualitative, maybe your ability to learn or ability to do what? To delegate. Those are qualitative things. Or your ability to make decisions. Those are qualitative things. So we need to ensure that we have both quantifiable or qualitative and quantitative measures, so that we do not appear like we are inclined towards one aspect. Then on crafting an instrument, a rating instrument, we should ensure that we craft an instrument that is development oriented. Meaning we are looking at the development of employees for that kind of tool. On competencies, we should be able to isolate the various evaluators to ensure that the different competence levels that we are looking at are also clear and vivid to the person that we are going to assess. Then on resistance, let us ensure that we provide feedback that focuses more on the developmental approach. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is this developmental approach? And I would still also want to bring in whatever Beatrice talked about, that they do it because they just do the appraisal for the sake of it. When you talk about developmental approach, then you are trying to integrate the individual career goals with the organization. When I join the organization, I should be able to perceive myself growing in that organization. I should see that my potential will be utilized and it will contribute towards the success of the organization. And ultimately, I'll also, when I leave this organization, I'll leave this organization having achieved some competencies. That's when we bring in the issue of what? Development approach. So it may not just be money, but I should be looking at what other opportunities am I likely to gain from this? What networks will I gain from this organization? What sort of skills am I likely to get from this organization? When I work in this position, am I going to be mentored? What sort of role models will I get? So all that is what will inform this process. Then resistance, of course, if people see that this performance management is meant to develop them or to grow them or to make them more competent, that's when they'll actually support the whole process and the whole idea. Now, in appraisals or in performance management, we have a number of errors. But these errors particularly deal with appraisals. And this is where I said, as much as you'll be having that conversation around the meeting, the performance appraisal meeting, but if you have all these, we'll be looking at these errors that happen during the appraisals, then they will affect the credibility of your discussion. They'll also affect the time you'll take to agree on some of those issues. And they'll also affect the perception of your results. Let's see whether I have power. Okay, sorry. I'm just checking my power connection. Yeah, so what I was saying is that these errors will ultimately impact on the whole process of the appraisal interview. It will also affect the credibility of the results. Because at times you had people saying that my supervisor was biased, or my supervisor was focusing on an issue we had or a disagreement we had in 2018, or was focusing on a thing that we had in May. So all that are actually classified under these errors. So as a start, we need to ensure that the appraiser does not subject the employee to these errors, because these false ratings may adversely affect the data collected during performance appraisals. And some of them are, for example, unclear standards. Now, unclear standards, basically this is where we said, if you're doing the same work, the same position, then are we being subjected to the same standard of evaluation? Or are we having a situation where some people are subject to a different set of standards? Or are we having a uniform standard which is agreeable and we all understand it and we know that this is what is, or these are the indicators upon which our evaluation will be done? We also have what we call halo effect. Now, halo effect is more of, let me give an example. If we went to the same school or to the same university, and I find Mary coming for an interview, and we were in the same university, the same high school, and here we are meeting in an interview, and I'm the interviewer, or I'm the supervisor. Because of the halo effect, I'm likely to perceive, depending on how I've perceived Mary, I'm likely to be influenced in my decision-making about the performance of Mary out of what? The previous experiences that we've had, the good experiences that we've had. Meaning, if this person we've had a very cordial relationship, I'm likely to be influenced to overlook the weaknesses in their performance. So I will end up rating Mary very well, yet she has a lot of limitation that if that was not affecting my judgment, I will have actually ironed out those areas and told Mary, this is what you need to work on to better your performance. So halo effect is about having a cordial relationship that you've had before, or being influenced by how we've been able to relate before. So I'll be regarding you as somebody who performs very well. And this is a common case whereby when you hire people that are so close to you in the organization, in most cases, this will affect your judgment about their performance. Even if the supervisor comes to you and says, John is not performing, you'll always ask, are you sure he's not performing? Because of the halo effect. There's also another one, which is the opposite of halo effect, which is Horn's effect, but I've not included it here. Now, Horn's effect, to the contrary, is the perception or the experience I've had with you, which is negative. So I always regard you as a very bad person. So because I've always seen you as a bad person, I don't expect anything good in you. So when I see a rating that is good, I'll always question and say, no, this one is not. I don't think I agree with this. I don't know whether we remember in high school, even in primary, there were some people who the school knew that whenever there is punishment or there's a mistake, when people have to make noise in a class, so and so cannot miss in that list. Or if it's about late coming to school, you cannot miss on that list. So when the teacher is checking the names, he will ask, but where is so and so? If that person is missing on that list, the teacher will say that this list, I don't think it's correct. Now that is again on what? On horns effect. Horns, just from the word horns. Kumea pembe. Ukisema mtu amemea pembe. Do we attribute kumea pembe with the positivity or negativity? Eh? Normally, it denotes a negative connotation. Where you say somebody amemea pembe. So that's the horns effect. So the same thing happens at workplace where you'll have this preformed mind about so and so because you don't like them. So it becomes a horns effect. Or whenever there's a problem, utajua tu ni so and so. You just say, Patrick, in this one, if there's a problem with the fraud, Patrick should not miss in this. That's a horns effect. Or if it's about people not submitting reports, whenever there's a report on people who have not submitted reports, you'll always know that Patrick cannot miss in that. Now that's the horns effect. So it tends to affect your assessment during the performance evaluations. And that's why when people have assessed themselves or they have rated themselves 8, because you believe that they cannot get 8, you'll always tell them, no, I don't think you can get 8. That's now the horns effect. Then we have personal preferences, prejudices, and biases. Now, this is more about you just, according to you, so and so will always be a good person. Or according to you, this person can never score 50%. According to you, this person can never get 80%. You just have your own prejudices around them and you feel that at no point can they perform. Or you don't just like them. That general perception that I don't just like them. This person is always bragging. So he's always talking so much, but it doesn't work. So you develop that in your mind and it affects your assessment. Or this person, there always complains about him not working as a team or her not working as a team. So that now becomes the biases that we are talking about. Closely related to that is now the discrimination. These are very, very serious one, where now you're just discriminating somebody because you dislike them because of their religion, because of their race, because of their ethnicity, because of their age, okay, or because of any of those discriminatory factors. So you just discriminate them, and you say this one cannot. Even if I'm appraising for a managerial position, this person cannot get it, or this person cannot become or cannot join this position, or cannot hold this position in this organization. That's now discrimination. Then first impressions. I don't know whether we've had these when we are recruiting people. When somebody comes for the interview, he or she presents herself as the person you'll be looking for. The way they will present themselves, the way they will talk, the way they'll give you ideas, until you ask yourself, where have you been not getting such kind of people? So they actually wow you with the information that they have and the strategies that they're going to put in place, until now you feel that we now have the right person. So because of that initial impression they will create to you, even if you receive a report that they're not working, you'll always say, no, but that person looked very impressive. How come you're saying that they're not able to perform? Then we also have what we call central tendency. Now, central tendency, this is related to the graph, the normal graph. You must have those who have scored very well, others in the middle, others at the end. So when you're doing your rating in your team, if you have 3 people, according to you, because of the central tendency concept, you ensure that at least kuna mmoja who is above the rest, there's this other one who is average, and there's somebody who is also at the lower level. So you, according to you, you must always observe the normal curve. That's where central tendency comes in. But according to you, nobody can score when you're rating. Like, there are people who will tell you that you are very mean. Nobody can score 70. The highest is 69.4. Or you ensure that nobody gets 50 like that. So that's now the central tendency. Then we have leniency versus strictness. Now, how does this work? Leniency is where you become so friendly, very friendly, and also it's like you are thinking on behalf of that person. They have not met the expectations, but you say, okay, I think this person is a good person. He's not a bad person, even if he's not performing, but he's a good person. So let us give him 50%. Now that is leniency, because now you are being influenced by not the work, but just from your own judgment. You're just saying that I don't think this person should score less. Alternatively, also there's that strictness, whereby you decide that nobody can score above 50. All of you below 50. Now that's now the leniency versus strictness. The same way, when you talk about leniency, you can say, instead of giving this person, I've given him 65, I can pay 70 so that they get the highest score. That's also being lenient, because you're making decisions without due consideration, without any justification, and without any justifiable effort that you can say, this effort, because of 1, 2, 3, 4, this person is justified to get a 60 or a 70. Then we have this recency effect. Now, this is a common one for most people. And I would like to get, I know you have so many experiences with regard to this. Have you realized that there are people, anytime you move towards the appraisal, they become so good. They become so willing to assist. They become so available, and they're willing to learn. They're willing to support other people. They're willing to work as a team. What those people are doing is to affect the appraiser with the recency effect. There are people who will start coming to your office to say hi to you. They'll start calling you. They'll start engaging you and asking you whether there's anything they can support you on. That way, they're just doing it so that they blind you. And you've had this case whereby somebody will say, reason of late, I've seen Henry has really changed. Now, you make those kind of statements without knowing the intention behind Henry's change. But if you look ahead, you can see, oh, but the appraisals are around the corner. If you think of that, then you'll know why Henry has suddenly changed their behavior. They're not the same people who used to be abusive. They're not the same people who used to come to work late. They're not the same people who used to give reports late. They've just changed drastically. They're doing that because for them, appraisal is on 30th. So if you want to get a good score, I have to cooperate between October and November to ensure that I get a good score. Now that is recency effect. So we need to be very, very observant when it comes to this. That these people are there, there are very many. The same way people will be very good during probation, but once they're confirmed, you realize their true picture. Because what they're doing at that moment is just to actually make you think that it is the employee that you are looking for. It is the staff that you are looking for. Then we have also what we call actor-observer bias. Actor-observer bias also borrows heavily. Okay, yeah, I've seen a comment from Faith. Faith, we can have a chat on the sides. So then actor-observer bias happens whereby it's similar to recency, but now the way I'm carrying out myself, the way I'm presenting myself, it will make you think that I've become so committed to the work, or I've become so professional, I've become very, very supportive, but I'm only doing it because I know who is observing me. Have you seen cases whereby, if I know you are the decision maker with regard to my promotion, when I want to appear that I'm working, I will always give a report. I'll always make sure that I pass by your office. I'll always make sure that I talk to you about what you are doing currently. Now you're acting so that the observer sees you in a particular light. That's also another aspect of the observer bias. So even if you're not reporting to me, I'm a HR, but you're not reporting to me, but you're reporting to Patrick on the other side. But I know there's a subordinate or a staff that Patrick supervises. So that staff will always make sure that he knows that Patrick has been giving me reports about his lateness. So he will make sure that every time he comes to work early, and he'll pass by my office so that I see that, so that it's creating an observer-actor bias. So at the end of it, even if Patrick gives me a report, but this guy has been coming, I've been seeing him quite early. What is it? Now that's the observer bias. Then we have stereotyping. Now stereotype is a very, we call it a very abstract one, where you know very well, according to you, you don't expect Patrick or you don't expect Beatrice or Nancy to work in marketing. You don't expect them to work in finance, or you don't expect them to work as maybe as a messenger. So you stereotype them and felt that for them, this role is not for them. So when you're doing an assessment and you find that they have excelled in that area, you ask yourself, no, you cannot. There's no way you can be a good person when it comes to public speaking. We expect a lady, for example, or a man, or a lady to be very good in what? In public speaking than a man. So that way it's a stereotype. Where according to you, you can't have a man excelling in that position. Look at the roles of the front office. Nowadays, we've actually shifted from just having ladies at the front office. We also have men. The essence behind this shift is because of that stereotype that was associated with the front office. That a front office must always be a lady and not a man. So that's part of the stereotype. So if somebody can excel at that role, then we are now trying to ensure that we have dealt with these biases that come with this stereotyping. Okay, Catherine has a comment. We have mainly talked about how the appraiser can change behavior so as to have the objective appraisal. What can you advise an appraisee to do in a situation where there are very strict appraiser who they cannot approach and just focuses, magnifies the mishaps? What can you advise an appraisee to do in a situation where they have a very strict appraiser who they cannot approach and just focuses or magnifies their mishaps? Thank you, Catherine. Catherine is asking that question that we've dwelt more, I think, on the appraiser for the objective appraisal. But how about you now, when you're being appraised? Are you the kind that will also be very, very rigid? You don't want to listen. You don't want to be guided. That's the question that Catherine is asking. How do we advise ourselves to be in a situation where we have a strict appraiser who we cannot approach and just focuses and magnifies the mishaps, or just magnifies our what? Our problems or our limitations? Any response from the professionals from that observation from Catherine? Have you had a very strict appraiser who is always looking at your limitations? And how do we advise you in such kind of circumstances? That's the question that Catherine is asking. Anybody to react to that? Yes, Mary?
I think it's an issue of attitude that the appraisers form. But as we said from the very beginning, if the system is intact, if the documentations are right, you always have a case. And then I was thinking, is it possible that instead of one-to-one appraiser, appraisee, is it possible to have a panel, like one other or two other people, so that it is not you and me? You can, when you argue your case and you have facts, somebody else can see the other side of the appraisee. Yeah, so that's my contribution.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I think that's a very insightful comment, that we need to have a third person to provide a sort of balance in the conversation. And I think the third person is likely to be more objective in terms of if there's any challenges with regard to disagreements. Okay, then Terry is also advising that we need to have records, documents to support yourself. Maybe what I can say is,
James.
Yes.
I can also make a contribution.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, I've seen it happen in a place I've worked, where you find in some stations, some staff will complain and say that their manager is very strict, so that you find in some of the other stations, you may find a number of staff rated outstanding, but probably in this particular station, maybe the best would be like a very good, and the staff attributed to the strictness of the manager. So they'll say that our manager is so strict. I don't think that the staff in the other stations are doing much better than us. So I think my view would be that if we ensure that at the objective setting level, that that is very well done, that will remove the element of subjectivity. I think that comes a lot when there is a subjectivity and where maybe some of the measures are not very well set. And I think it can also improve by training managers as well. Yeah, so that so that we enhance on the objectivity.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I think that's a very appropriate comment in terms of maybe, as you are saying, now you have different regions of the same organization, but some people are being rated better than others. So it becomes a challenge, because then the others will be asking, how come our boss is very, very, very strict? But also it boils down to, yes. Yes.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I wish to contribute. I want to agree with what my colleague has said in terms of dealing with a very strict supervisor. Actually, when you get it right from objective setting, then those strictness, like being given marks which you feel are not yours, some of those things may be reduced. At the same time, training. What I want to differ slightly with is what what Mary said about having two supervisors appraising. I mean, having a third party during your appraisal process, because again, these appraisals are done by supervisors. It's between a supervisor and a supervisee. When you introduce a third party, is this third party your supervisor? So again, that one brings problems of who am I really reporting to? Am I really reporting to this third party? Because that third party does not really understand what you're doing. And in the appraisal, it's somebody who supervises you, who understands what you're doing, is supposed to be appraising you. So issues of a third party may bring other huge issues. That's number one. Number two, on the issues of bringing a third party, it may not be really practical, because these appraisal processes, they are long. I don't know the experience my colleagues have, But my experience is these are not just processes we do. I mean, these are things we plan for. They are time taking. It's not something we plan, now we're going to sit and do so that we start involving third parties. They're time taking, and the practicality part of it is what I don't understand, that you can actually constantly include third parties in your appraisal, because remember, those third parties also have their work. They could be supervisees also, ama supervisors. So the practicality of bringing in the third party may not be possible. At the same time, it will bring conflicts, because then you will look like you're reporting to two supervisors when essentially you're supposed to be appraised by one supervisor, unless you're reporting to two roles. So that's where I wanted to slightly differ, and I can be corrected. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your observation. And I think it also depends with where you, okay, Mary wants to respond. Mary?
I don't differ with her. I know it has its own complications, but we always have like supervisor in an organization is not the only person in an organization. So while I'll work with a RZ throughout the year, but there is this final one where the grading is determined, where you have your documents, where you have your, where you are arguing your case, where you know why you feel that you've not been fairly treated. So if this person is the determinant of your life, what happens now? Like what Patrick has said, other stations feel that they have been this station, the manager is too strict, and everybody in the organization agrees with that. So how do we overcome? How do we overcome some of those challenges?
Could I contribute a little again, Mwalimu? Sorry.
Yes.
No, there at that bit I agree, because when it comes that now you have a conflict between you and your supervisor, you cannot totally agree. Keep everything documented, because again, the appraisal process is that when you disagree, when there's a disagreement between the supervisor and the supervisee, the supervisor of your supervisor, you get the supervisor of your supervisor comes in. Or if there's a committee, that conflict can be taken to for discussion. So for normal appraisal processes, third parties should not be really involved. But when there's a conflict that a supervisor and a supervisees have failed to agree, then that is escalated to a third person. And that third person should not be somebody at the same level of leadership. If you understand, it should be somebody who is coming in as kind of mediator, to sort the conflict, to make you understand where and sort where the problem is. So a third person, as for me, I mean, my understanding should actually come in when there is a conflict, when there's a misunderstanding, a disagreement between a supervisor and a supervisee. But in all these disagreements, everything must be kept in writing, so that when it's escalated, it's escalated officially to either an official committee, or if it's a HRO, the process is clear. When a HRO has not agreed with the supervisor, where should I go next? That one should also come clear in the whole performance management system. Thanks.
Absolutely. I think that clarifies it, because what you're saying is, you know, if I'm the one supervising you, of course, I have another supervisor who is ahead of me. So once I've done the reviews and there is a conflict or a disagreement between me and, let's say, Dr. Kintu, then that matter will be now resolved by my other supervisor, who will now look at, because now my supervisor will be supervising me based on how I've also appraised Kintu and the rest. So now that's where now this aspect of the third party comes in. But in normal scenario, of course, it won't be practical to have a third party. It will only arise when now you have these disagreements arising out of the evaluation. I think that's now clear. And I've seen even Knight says they usually have a second level review, which brings checks and balances. Yeah, so we're just looking at the second level in an event where there is a lot of disagreement at the first level. But in most cases, you'll find if you have your clear objectives and targets stipulated, then you normally you'll not experience a lot of hurdles in the final review. Thank you very much for that input from the three professionals. Also, Catherine, I think that issue of the appraiser being strict, Terry has said you need to have records, documents to support yourself. And I think also Patrick weighed in on that matter, on how that needs to be discussed. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that. So allow me now to move to the next aspect, which is now the sources of errors, which I've already discussed. Then, yeah, all these, I think I've already discussed them. So now how do we resolve that? We can resolve those errors if, for example, we ensure that we have role clarification. We need to be clear about the role of each individual in the organization. Secondly, we need to align the goals directly to the company with regard to the employee, so that we don't have a situation where there is a lot of lack of integration between what I'm pursuing and what the department expects from me, or what my supervisor expects from me. Then, more importantly, also, we need to have that ongoing feedback, so that this feedback will help the employee to improve in their performance and bring in line with the individual goals. At the same time, also, we need to ensure that there is ongoing monitoring to ensure that we make corrective decisions. Then we also need to embed coaching and support in our supervisory roles. We ensure that we identify the gaps, and also ensure that we provide coaching to support these people in terms of training, in terms of just having a mentorship conversation and all that. Then we talked about standardization, so that the process should be standardized to ensure consistency across the roles. Then another thing that is very crucial is rewards, recognition, and compensation. Let us ensure that our appraisals or our performance management process inclines the efforts. Let us reward efforts. Let us also reprimand those who are not performing. And once that is there, then it will work towards enhancing the performance of people. Then we need to train appraisers. Now, this is very key. We need to train appraisers. And this is the point I mentioned earlier, that have your supervisors been trained? The line managers, have they been trained? Because once they have been trained, then you'll not be solving these cases that will be brought to your desk every now and then. Because of one, there's no proper documentation, the approach is poor. Somebody will come and say that this supervisor we've never agreed. He's always biased towards me. He's always making comments that are not meant to support my growth in the organization. Then we need that continuous communication. We also need to build trust and confidence between the employee and the supervisor and the employee, or employee and the management. This will ensure that you work, or you agree that you are working as one. You become partners in that process, so that I'll tell you that if you fail, I'm also failing. If you score highly, I'll also score highly. That agreement or that confidence should be developed, so that, and that can only work if everything is objective. Because I know if my team, I'm not able to empower my team, it will actually impact on my general performance also when I'm being appraised. Another thing is reliability. Let's ensure that that appraisal is reliable, the results are reliable, so that we don't keep on pointing out limitations of the appraisal process. Then, of course, the objective should be specific. We need to review any appeals that come by, and also we need to have the post-appraisal interview, so that employees understand, or also to gather feedback about the process. Let them tell you, how do they feel about it? How do they feel about their limitations? How do they feel about their queries that they raised? Were they handled in the proper way? What could be the best way to handle such queries? That's one thing that you can try to introduce. Although people will say that if I've scored you low, for example, if I've given you a low score, you'll always say that the appraisal process was not correct. But I tend to differ, because if from the start we had a clear goals and expectations and we discussed them and we've come up with the way forward, then the person that I'm appraising should actually acknowledge that we had a thorough discussion on this, and it actually showed that I actually did not do well in this area, and I'm going to work or to do better in the same. Then of course, documentation, that one we cannot belabor much on it, because everything is about documentation. Make sure that you have documents to support any of the comments, any of the actions that you're taking. Accuracy of the ratings and the quality of the rating form, all those should be part of that. So as we come to the end, this case of Newton was just been appointed as the Vice President HR to Helios Inclusive. He wants to get a better understanding of the performance management system of his new company. What should he do to understand? Now, these are just recap questions on what we've discussed. Then what is meant by KPI and how useful are they? And already we've had a discussion around that. So in summary, we've looked at what is strategic approach and integrated approach of performance management. We looked at the performance scorecard, the evaluations, and the performance management system, consisting of a set of other subsystems. So before I finish on that, I had mentioned about how do we, or what is the modern performance management approach be like in the era of COVID. And I just wanted to highlight a few components on the performance management system, or what we can say, the modernized performance management system in the era of COVID and beyond, and also in the era of technology. So you'll acknowledge that the performance management system that we are now looking at, or what we've been working on, or what companies have been trying to juggle with because of COVID, is not is more of a very flexible one, collaborative, adaptive, and individualized. Reason being, because we are dealing with people in different circumstances. Remember, one of us mentioned yesterday that they have around 60 people working from home. Now, all these 60 people, they have different capabilities. So you don't subject them to the same sort of management process because of the different conditions that they are in. Vis-a-vis somebody who is working or coming to the office, or alternating from work and home. So what does that then require? It requires that the new performance management process should consider three factors. One, we need to have what we call agile goals. Goals that are agile. And these goals that are agile require that employees own those goals, and they should expect change. They should own and expect change. So meaning that employees and managers should always be looking out for those opportunities to pivot the changes to the business. So you're looking at how do we pivot these changes to the business. Right now, you saw a lot of movement towards digital marketing. You can imagine if you had a department of marketing and now it has to shift to digital marketing. Then now how are you going to measure the performance of this sales and marketing team? Now you have to even change your strategy, your performance management tool, so that you include the adaptation or the innovative way in which now marketing has to shift from the face-to-face or the personalized now to digital. That's now the agility that we are talking about. So that now we are able to pivot these changes that are coming with now the business needs at that particular moment. Hence, as we do that, then we also need to amend our tools, the tools that we're going to use to measure or to evaluate the performance of these people. So we need to ensure that the goals have been amended to ensure that they capture those changes. So that's the first one, agile goals. Then two, we need to embrace what we call ongoing conversations. We need to have ongoing conversations. There's a study that was done by McKinsey in September this year, and they involved 800 companies in US. And what the purpose to find out was how are employees, what is their feedback with regard to communicating with their managers? What is the feedback like? How has been the feedback since COVID struck? And apparently they came up with very interesting results. And they say that half of the employees indicated that actually they have been receiving feedback and have been in constant communication. But the rest, they say that this COVID has actually made them to have very limited communication, unlike before. So if they look at it before COVID and after COVID, half communication has been persistent. Half of them feel that it has not been there. Then the question is, what will managers need to do to make sure that the management style that they're using is viable going forward? And the recommendation was that they need now to shift into a lot of coaching, a lot of informal engagements with staff, so that since people are not working from the office, then you need to engage them from wherever they are. And as you engage them, then you're able to create that accountability of performance and development. That way, then you don't have these questions where, or you don't have these problems where somebody will complain to you and say that I've been talking to Beatrice and we talked in the morning, she was to send me a report, now she's in Teja. She has switched off her phone. How do I get the report? So you need that constant engagement because these people are not working from where you are. You cannot reach them. So you need to devise innovative ways of bringing them close to you to develop that mutual trust and that confidence in them for them now to work with you as a team. So as managers, then you need to focus on the future, so that when you focus on the future, look at how the new technologies that you are venturing in, how is it going to make these roles even more efficient, and let people understand how the efficiency will be attained between these. Number three factor is we need to adjust to dynamic work environments. We need that adjustment to the dynamic work environment with regard to accountability and incentives. Dynamic work environment with regard to accountabilities and incentives. Because you'll agree with me that the incentives before the pandemic will actually differ with the incentives after this pandemic. So it'll be important that now we have to look into that and ensure that the incentives are tailored towards this kind of work or this kind of feedback that we are going to have, so that we don't subject employees to the old form of metrics or incentives, yet they're not applicable at the moment. Right now, how many people have you taken for this period? Are you taking for this dinner for the company, the end of year party? So in place of that, what are you going to do to ensure that you still make these people engaged? Because now you not have these the pompous end of year party and all that. What other innovative ways are you going to do to ensure that you keep these people motivated? That's now some of the questions that we need to ensure that we put in place as we meet the expectations and manage the expectations and flexibility of our staff. So those are the three parting short statements that I'll advise you to use as you now think of how you need to manage the performance of people, considering that they are working from or they're working remotely. Because what is important is that we have to keep tracking progress and we also need that high performance from our team. So we see that we need to do that because that's the way we need to ensure that we keep track of the progress that we are doing. So currently, I know there are people who are asking me whether they need to effect the appraisal at the end of the year. I know there are some companies we've discussed, they're asking me, now that with this pandemic, then do we appraise people? And we had a lot of conversation saying, oh, we've not had any performance we had to shut down and all that. But I told them now, first, even if there's pandemic, but you need to measure what is it that you've attained in line with the effect of the pandemic, because now that's what will inform you to know how adverse the pandemic has been. But if you don't do that assessment, then you'll not be able to learn from any of this, because even from the pandemic, now there are things that you've innovatively developed for your company. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. And it's now time for questions or comments.
Mwalimu.
Yes.
I think I missed, there's something I missed yesterday.
Yeah.
But I wanted to confirm something.
Okay.
It's a basic question, but what's the difference between KPIs and objectives? Performance objectives and okay, at the initial stage of the appraisal process, we set objectives.
Yes.
Others do KPIs.
Yes.
So assuming you're using a performance appraisal tool, are these two used together? And what could be the difference between a KPI, a key performance indicator, and an objective, a performance objective?
Right. Okay. When it comes to the performance objective, it's just that what I talked about, the evolution of the appraisal. So we have appraisals that are more inclined towards objectives, but we have others that are more on, they have the KPIs. Reason being, the KPI ones, they tend to have a more holistic approach towards performance. Like they tend to emulate what the balance scorecard has. So they'll have KPIs under, for example, customer satisfaction. You have the statements under that. Then apart from that, then also you'll have statements under financial. So you'll have a KPI for finances where you say you want to increase your profitability by 10%, for example. So how will you attain 10%? Now you talk about your strategies or the initiatives under that. You'll have to drive business, you'll have to engage in digitization and all that. So now those are the specific initiatives under each of those KPIs. But when you use objectives tend to be a bit general, but the aspect of KPI now gives a holistic view of performance. So it's like we're just looking at modifying. There has been that aspect of modifying the evaluation process so that it's more objective.
Let me give you a practical example, Mwalimu.
Yes.
So that I can understand it in a more simplified way. If a goal, okay, an objective is kind of a goal. If at the beginning of the financial year, you set a goal, I'm an objective for your officer, and say by the end of the year, you needed to have engaged 30 interns. Okay, so it's upon this officer to look for ways of engaging interns, to look for, to ensure the institution has capacity in terms of sitting spaces, provision, all that. Yes. So an officer has a goal and a performance objective. By the end of the financial year, you needed to have engaged 30 interns. That's a goal, stroke objective. What will be the KPI for this?
Now the KPI for that, you're looking at interns. So yes. How will this staff get these interns? Where will they be drawn from? Now we'll look at the initiatives and the measurement. So to get 30 interns, they'll have to indicate the initiatives and say, I will need to get 5% from the university, 3% from the technical institutions, or 5% like that. Now, that's the categorization that now you use, because now you'll be looking at how do we measure that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, maybe I can just add my thoughts. Like the example she has given, if my objective is to engage 30 interns, I would simply say that my performance indicator is actually at the end of that exercise having 30 interns on board. So if I have the 30 interns on board, I would say that would be my performance indicator. There could also be another scenario that maybe there is something that I would want these interns to do. In other words, I'm not recruiting them for no reason. I'm recruiting them to fulfill a particular responsibility. Again, if I'm able to discharge that because I have brought them on board, again, that could also be my key performance indicator. So maybe that's something I could add maybe to what you said. I hope I've been heard.
Yes.
Yes, we heard
You've
you.
been heard. Actually, yeah, that's another way to understand the KPI. But I think there was a slide that was talking about how to develop these KPIs in various ways, which I'll take you back. But what happens is your tool may be focused on objectives. Then you're just looking at what are the indicators of this? How will I measure these objectives? Or you go specifically now to the KPI. So all in all, it is it's an approach that we can always look at it and look at which is the best way. So you can either use objectives or just focus on the KPIs. But more importantly is how are you going to measure all these indicators or these objectives? That's what is key to any results that you'll be purposing your tool to achieve. Thank you. Right. So I think thank you very much for weighing into this conversation. I appreciate for that. Remember, we are here to learn from each other. And I'm really indebted with the comments that you raised because they are meant to give us a different scope or a wide scope when it comes to handling these issues.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, that is Ryan. Hello, we can hear you. We can hear you. I think it's from somebody called Ryan Galaxy. I don't think that's her correct name. I'm not sure how she's talking to us or maybe another conversation. Right, so that is it from me. Thank you very much. Then over to you.
Thank you, James, for such a very wonderful presentation. I've also learned a lot of things today. So congrats. I've learned. You see, performance management is a topic that is not taken seriously by a lot of people in management level. And by the end of the day, they end up, I've used the word dead twice, they end up messing stuff completely, destroying organization culture, and before you know it, the staff under them become disoriented. I read somewhere that the reason why staff leave organizations is mainly because of the boss. Not anything else. The organization is okay, fine, but the boss is something else, maybe directly from hell. Sorry to have said that, but then that is what I read someplace. I've seen, and I've been working for some time now. I've had a situation whereby you have the management person insisting that I don't want so and so to be in my department, or I don't want to work with so and so. So and so is a non-performer. You see, that is a word that is used or bandied around quite often, that this person is a non-performer, so simtaki kwa my department. Then when you look at the appraisal document, this person has been scoring 80%, outstanding performance. There was another term that was used by the trainer. James, what did you use? There was outstanding performance. Then very well. Somebody would remind me that. Now, don't you think there is a discrepancy between what is on record and what this manager or head of department is discussing or talking about this stuff? They are not related. They are not haziambatani hata kidogo. Reason, on one hand, the documents say this is a high performer. The word of mouth, the spoken word, is that this person is a non-performer. So sometimes it would be such people, once we leave this class, we'll be able to talk to them and maybe take them through such a training for purposes of ensuring that during their appraisal period, or the period under review, from the start of that period, everything regarding performance is documented. So one is not appraising anyone with emotions. And also staff do not take this person, or do not take you for granted. Nilishakuja kuona now, like somebody was asking me another question, that in office relationships, those who try to get involved with including calling each other or your junior staff, umemwita hi dear, then maybe respond hi love, then how do you appraise one another? How do you appraise that person? So assuming that person becomes a poor or a non-performer, how do you address that? Suppose that person accuses you or accuses the line manager, because you are HR professionals, you might not be involved in such. So the line manager gets accused of the reason I'm scoring very low marks is because my boss wanted us to get involved, and because I refused this, that's why I'm scoring poorly. So that we'll hold that discussion sometime, someday, because dealing with managing performance has a very wide range of expectations. Now, I see that the time is, and I want you to put on your videos. We're having a discussion, so let's have the video on. And I'm suspecting only Patrick Munuhe and Dr. Kintu Mogeni were present during class. Yeah, I've seen Salim Malova was present. That's very
Yes,
good.
I am very present, Dennis.
Yeah, you can see some real activities happening, meaning some people are actually present. So I hope maybe what I can maybe summarize something here would be the purpose of performance management, the purpose. So take that home, and I would just mention, one is to provide meaningful feedback. You see, feedback must be ongoing concern. Performance management, one of them is to provide feedback. And sometimes a lot of things have changed to or from when we used to say what this employee can do for this organization. Also nowadays, employees expect the same. What can my organization do for me? So it is a two-way. So now, one of them, or the purpose of performance management, is to give feedback as an ongoing concern. Usigoje mpaka saa zile everything has gone haywire. That is when we will give feedback. Like, by the way, have you met these bosses who will appraise you? Anajua unaanguka, anakugoja pale mwisho uanguke, then anakwambia si I told you, uliona utaanguka. So eventually you find like workplaces become traps. Traps ni mtego. Then now, how are we helping our organizations to perform? We are not, especially if the workplaces become areas of hide and seek, pahali ya kugojeana, utaniona ni kugonge. And by the way, I've also seen those who appraise others anakuwa very rough and very tough. So when you are walking, you have that air of fear. Watu wa ukipita namna hii, it is like you have a tag on the back kwa t-shirt, appraiser. So you have to be feared. I guess that we today, after going through this session, at the Hari Aligi, I can see you. Which cow? Your cow is okay? Harry, your cow, your cow is okay. That is a game I have with Harry. We were at the 4th annual HR symposium. Then we had a game. Then a lady from Samburu County, yeye hakuwa anasikiza vile tunasema, so akaulizwa wakati alisikia ng'ombe akauliza ilikuwa aje Hale?
The cow is sick.
No, alikuwa ameulizwa namna gani?
You are supposed to pass the message the cow is sick. So when it reached to her, she forgot herself and said, which cow?
Oh yeah, and later she explained to us that she has several cows. So she had wakati ameambiwa the cow is sick, her maid ran home akashindwa mugani. Then she told us the cows have names, is it?
Yeah, they have names.
Yeah, so we didn't know the name. So I move on to item number 2. The other purpose of performance management is to encourage teamwork, collaboration, and communication. You see, performance management encourages teamwork, collaboration, and communication. You see, now we'll be communicating with one another, and we'll be collaborating with one another. There will be teamwork. Then the third item is to ensure everyone is achieving their SMART goals. Everyone is achieving their goals. Now, we don't wait until the performance has deteriorated or until that time, as I said, the performance is haywire, imepasuka. If there is performance management, there is continuous feedback, we will be able to ensure that the SMART goals ya huyu mtu who are managing, the person below me, they are achieving their goals as set out in their contract or performance contract document. Then we move on to making sure that the goals are relevant. Sometimes over the time, as one is moving towards their place or through the performance management period, you realize a certain goal that we set is no longer relevant. So we try to align those goals, the SMART goals that we have, to the current organizational demands, the current expectations, say from the management at the organization. Number 5, to provide continuous support. Yes, we gave you a performance contract. Did we provide the tools? Maybe over the period, did we keep checking, or do I keep checking that the person who reports to me, who I have a performance contract with, do I keep checking that? Because there are those assumptions or on a performance contract or on the work plan, that I'm assuming that I'll get all the necessary support from management. So do I keep checking to see, do you need something? Do you require this and that? Say a certain or a specific goal or a job required that this staff needs to be trained. So have I taken this person for training or for this contract period? Ama nilimwacha tu hivi nikampea kazi that required a specific skill but I never trained this person. So the support to identify or to provide continuous support. 6, to identify development areas. Okay, fine. What are the gaps? So what needs to be done? So you will provide, you identify areas that require to be developed. Then number 7, to offer recognition and reward. That is purpose of performance management. So for those people who are doing very well, we recognize them, we reward them. Then number 8, to make sure employees are engaged and happy. Yes, we try to see, are our staff happy? Are they engaged continuously? And for someone who knows that there is continuous communication, support is given when needed, areas of development are identified, it is very easy for this person to be continuously engaged. In fact, our next topic, and if you have enough CPD points, don't pay, just attend and share the link. Will be on employee engagement. Okay, if you already have your 10 CPD points, you attend that training and learn. This will be on employee engagement. That will be very important. That training will be on Monday. Monday, Tuesday, 2 days. It's very important for us to get to know this aspect of employee engagement. Then number 9, to provide employees with a clear career path. Like now, if I know this is my performance contract, I'm able to know what am I supposed to study. I'm able to prepare my career path. Najua nitasoma CHRP, nimalize, after this one nisome hii kitu ingine. When there is no clear or when there are no performance management, utapata nobody knows what to study or nobody knows how to progress career-wise. Then there is a lot of conflict, a lot of anxiety, and I've even had a situation whereby siku ya appraisal, somebody just calls the staff and anamwambia, we kuja kaa hapa, I want to appraise you. Now you are appraising this staff on what? You see? So some organizations and some management can be very shocking. So we take note on that one, the career path. Then we move on to the purpose of performance management enables this staff to take corrective action. Kama nilianguka hapa na pale, I'm able now to make remedial actions. I'm able to nastahili nijipange, nijue hapa ninaanguka, so that nisianguke, this is what I need to do. Then lastly, or second last, is to determine how leadership can motivate and coach. You see, when you are conducting performance appraisals or in charge of that performance management process, you are showcasing your leadership and coaching skills. And I guess we need also a course on coaching and mentoring. And maybe for those who are doing CHRP, on that topic, we should do it before that exam takes place. So performance management ensures that your leadership, you're also able to, to measure or to weigh yourself, whether you're moving towards the right direction, the staff below you wanakuangalia. I heard the trainer mention the 360 degrees feedback. Notes on 360 degrees feedback are on your portal. And by the way, you can access those notes at any time You get issued a certificate dated the day you have taken that course. We have the 360 degrees feedback. We have the power of feedback on as a course, and we have designing feedback as another course. So those are some very beautiful courses one needs to go through them for purposes of moving forward. Lastly, is to improve your bottom line. An organization, what is if something is not measurable, then it is not worth doing. So performance management is very important. It improves your bottom line. No, your bottom line, yeah, your organization. If your organization's bottom line is moving up, then I guess your bottom line is also maybe assured. We have organizations that share profit with their employees of or bonus at specific times. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I should share that purpose of. I'll share the PDF document, that summary on our WhatsApp, the various WhatsApp groups that we have. Then you can have an in-depth look. I've missed so many words there, but I'll share that with you. So we have a training. There is a training tomorrow. Tomorrow is Saturday. That is on transactional leadership. We have switched to the trainer. The trainer will be Catherine Wamwangi. James was scheduled to train that, but he's held up in something else. So Catherine Wamwangi will handle transactional leadership. The notes for this particular training are already online. The video for this particular course is also already online. It is important for you to follow our YouTube link. That way, you will be assured every time. And I think one of these days I needed to change my sitting position so that ni kama nimekaa kwa giza, like a dark cat in a dark room. That I think is not good. Yeah. So what we need is, if you're missing some CPD points, don't hesitate to talk to me. Then we are always learning in ACHRP, and we will ensure that you have acquired your CPD points, 10 of them, to enable you renew your membership without stress. So I want to open the floor. I appreciate feedback from you. It helps us to improve what we do. And as I've always said, if you are a trainer, you are out there, reach out to me. We see how we'll engage you. It is important for us to have a huge pool of, what do you call this? A talent pool. So that we can have, and I'll give you a platform to train. This is a paid Zoom. We can have a training every day for 24 hours without interruptions. So I'll even give you room to showcase what you can do. Then ukiona mtu amekaa chini unamuona tu hapa nywele peke yake, again I guess that person will be afraid to train. So that is a shy person, which is okay. So we'll give you a platform to do training, showcase what you can do. You see the way Harry Aligi is seated, powerfully seated. Sally Malova, Franz, that is the way to go. I mean, I'll give you a platform. You train. You see, we can arrange a training any time of the day, from Sunday to Sunday, for 24 hours. Then you showcase. When I was starting off, when Corona hit, I thought, how are we going to be conducting our training? So the first thing I did was, I thought, let us buy Zoom license so that whenever we are conducting a training, it can go on and on uninterrupted, so that watu wakiwa wamekaa, they are able to feel that they have trained. So reach out to me or to us. That is I've shared my number there, 0722 300, that is 300-245. If you call that number, it belongs to the admin. It will ring here, so I would always receive your WhatsApp message or your call. Then one other thing, we have the 2020 Annual Industrial Relations Summit coming up. I said that yesterday, I repeat this for purposes of those who would want to make room to attend. It's coming up on 8th to 10th December. You still have room to make NITA application if you work for a NITA levy contributing organization. It is not right for you to allow your organization's monies to disappear. The monies you've contributed this year cannot be used next year. So make a point, make your application. Fill in that skills upgrading form. Let me know. From where I sit, I can follow up that for you. So let's meet. A lot of people I was with at the annual HR symposium have confirmed attendance. I'm looking forward to meet them again. And we usually do a lot of things, including having the Jerusalem challenge, which I showed you yesterday. If you follow us on YouTube, and I think I'll share that link right now so that you can be able to follow that. I've shared that link on the chat. If you click on that link, that is our YouTube channel. All the trainings we've conducted, you can see there is a button up there on YouTube, live on YouTube. So this session was live on YouTube. All other sessions have been live on YouTube. You're able to follow that. You can follow current trainings for free. You can follow, you can go through previous trainings again for free. So it's not all about money sometimes. We say we are at ACHRP, we are always training. I'll not talk again, but I'll allow feedback. Thank you so much. Maybe I can call out those who have their videos on for a parting shot. Sally?
Thank you so much, Dan. It was a wonderful delivery. I appreciate it, and I also appreciate seeing names that I'm hoping be part of my network. So I'm grateful. It was good, and I'm looking forward to continuing with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Francis Onunga? Francis.
I would just like to say that it's a good opportunity for all of us, because it gets us to be able to train from wherever we are. And even if you have to work some extra hours, even if it's during working hours, you can take a break for about an hour, about 3 hours. As you're doing your work on your computer, at the same time, you are able to listen and train at the same time and take notes. So this is a very useful way of training for those of us who sometimes are not allowed to get off work to go and train. So I would like to encourage the management to continue with this. Thank you.
Karibu. And maybe to add on that, you can always attend our training. As I usually share the link for the training together with the costs. The reason for doing that, you may not be able to pay at that time, but it is better you attend the training rather than at some point later on you say, "Hi Dan, I don't have CPD points. Can you assist?" And how will I assist? But if you are saying, "I want to pay for a training that I attended so that I can get my certificate," that is better.
Yes.
Again, still if you don't want to get the certificates but you want the knowledge, no problem. Join. Learning is supposed to be free. Did you know that? Yes. It's supposed to that is those who have. I did BEd, that is Bachelor of Education. Then when we were describing education, there was the word of the not yet, wale hatujui tunajua after tumesomeshwa, so we can work together on that one. Then I know Dr. Kintu, you're there?
Yes, I am, Dennis.
But I need you to train.
Yes, I'll look for you very soon. I'm sorry I'm not able to put on my video. I'm at home and yes, I'm at home.
Yeah, very well. So, I know at home saa zingine hakuna video. Haya, very
Yes, but thank you so much for your leadership and management and for your selfless services. It's not usual for somebody to just allow people to get knowledge without really paying for anything. It's quite unique of you. So I commend you for that and we thank you for that.
Asante, asante.
And I'm looking forward to participate more on these trainings. And to
Asante,
train also. Thanks.
asante Daktari. Dr. Agnes?
Thank you. Let me say I appreciate, though I joined them late, I was seeing I did the training. If one for more, actually, I learned less.
Okay, very well, very well, very well. Emily Saina, you're there. You are finally were able to log in. Aya, ni sawa, ni sawa. Anyone else who wants to say something? Catherine? Okay, Saina?
Thank you.
Very well, very well. Mushemi?
Oh, for me, it's also to say thank you. We've really learned a lot about performance management, and it's a good reminder of what the best practices in performance management. I've learned a lot, and thank you for sharing this.
Karibu, karibu. So it is moving on to 12. So let's not prolong this beyond this, so that you're able to link up tomorrow for transactional leadership. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon. The afternoon will be in 4 minutes time. So have a very good afternoon. If you need anything regarding these trainings or past trainings, your CPD points, reach out to me. I will be able to engage with you. Thank you, and enjoy your Friday. Don't do anything that the principal of the academy has not expressly approved, but do enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
We can wave like this so that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
Dennis, I can see you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Dennis.
Francis, asante sana Shaira. Catherine, very well. Thank you. Asante sana. Catherine Nyangai, wonderful.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. At least the ones you will find they are not logging out, you will realize they were not even pleasant. Walikuwa they had logged in and yeah, utaona tu mtu amekwama hapo. Uone. Just check. Sinma Sekemisa was not pleasant. At Carlo M, at Florence Wajohi, at least she has. Hi, Florence.
Thank you, admin. Bye.
Hey, Karif, hi. Yes, I reset your password.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Computer finally. Wonderful. See, it's a good experience.